What is up, everyone? I am TST's TheMudMan. The weekend ranked event for Gods Unchained is coming up soon, so it's time to figure out what we are going to play this weekend. Before we talk about the meta or go over any decks at all, let's do what we always do and check out what gods are popular this week. We're on gudex.com. We've got it set to the past 7 days at Mythic rank. And no surprise, just like the past couple of weeks, the two most popular gods are Nature followed by War. But just like last week, Nature and War may be the most popular gods right now, and they're definitely good gods, but I don't think Nature or War will be winning this weekend ranked event. So, let's see. All the popularity is very similar to all the past weeks. First Nature, then War. Light may have been the least popular last week, now it's the second least popular. But this is not super important. Let's jump into the decks. Which decks are performing well and which one should you play over the weekend? Before we look at any deck list, I'd just like to remind everyone that all decks that we talk about for this video, their deck codes will be in the description below, so feel free to use those for max easeability. And let's jump into the first deck we're going to talk about, which will be Zoo Light. Okay, so the first god we've got to talk about is Light. This list was made by Clutch, and this is the deck that won the weekend ranked event last week. This deck had a perfect run of 25 and 25. Clutch even did it live on stream. And if you are interested more in Clutch as a player, as well as like this deck in general, feel free to watch the podcast Pods Unchained, which I am a co-host of. We did a little interview with Clutch. The link to the podcast will be in the description below. Definitely recommend it. It'll be a good listen. But enough talking about that. Let's talk about this Light list. This is a fairly standard Zoo Light list. It's got lots of good early game creatures, as you can see with the Skeleton Heavies, the Pyramid Wardens, the Athenian Archers. Got the Trial Spirits to buff up your creatures, make them even stronger. Let's see, Clutch has got all 4 of the 1-mana relics in here, 2 copies of the Cudgel and 2 copies of the Ritual Rod, which are really great for early game control. They're also particularly nice with Master of Indulgence, so you can get a clean kill on a creature regardless of how much health it has. Let's see, but the main win conditions for this deck is the same as most Zoo Light lists. You build up a board in the early game, you buff up their health a little bit, and then you play either Radiant Dawn, Canonize, Asterius, or all 3 to buff up your board and win the game. Let's see, some other important cards of note is we've got CERN in here. CERN is really great, does a whole bunch of stuff. It heals up your entire board, you draw a card for each friendly creature that you heal, and you put 3 order on a creature of your choice, so it slows down your opponent's board, it bolsters your strength by healing up your guys, as well as draws you more resources, so just a super strong card in general. Let's see, Clutch has 2 Golden Wing Sphinxes. This card was recently buffed. It used to be a 5/5 with no frontline. Now it has frontline, so you sort of have to deal with its afterlife effect. The card was definitely buffed. Not the greatest card of all time, but definitely stronger than it used to be. And if you are interested in more information about Light, we talked about Zoo Light in the last couple of weeks of the What to Play Over the Weekend videos. So give those a watch if you want more detail about Zoo Light's general strategy. But we are not done talking about Light just yet. This deck may have went 25 out of 25, but the deck's creator, Clutch, has an upgraded version of the deck that I'm a big fan of, so let's talk about that. Alright, so here is Clutch's new list. It's very similar, just 2 cards changed. He removed both of those Golden Wing Sphinxes, and he replaced them with an Odysseus as well as an Astrea's Envoy. And I really, really like these changes. Like I said with the Golden Wing Sphinx, it's not the most amazing card of all time. It's super decent. Odysseus, however, is really perfect for these Light decks. He's multiple creatures for 1 card, which is very convenient for Light, considering Light has no real comeback mechanics. But he's really great in combination with Asterius the Glittering One, with Astrea's Envoy, and with CERN the Moderator. So let's just read over Odysseus in case anyone is unaware of what he does. He's a 5-mana 3/7 with frontline. His roar effect is he summons 3 injured soldiers, they're just 1/1s, and Odysseus himself takes 6 damage. So you get 3 1/1s and a 1/3 for 5 mana, all with frontline. They can all be healed and used to draw tons of cards with CERN. All the injured soldiers that Odysseus makes, they're all potentially buff targets for Asterius, as well as Astrea's Envoy. And then, just they're all frontline, so really great against Slayer, good against Nature, barring wildfires. Just a solid choice in general. And then Astrea's Envoy for even more buff potential. So now you no longer need to be reliant on your Radiant Dawns, Canonizes, or Asterius. Now you also have Astrea's Envoy. All in all, I really like the changes that Clutch made to his deck. This light deck seems really good. Like we've been saying for the past couple of weeks, light is really strong in the meta right now, and this is definitely a powerful deck. Definitely consider playing light for your weekend ranked run for sure. Alright, for the next domain on the list, we've got Magic. This is sort of like a tempo, spell, structure, hodgepodge Magic deck. It was made by Mystery Man 4 boxes, and just like the light deck, this deck also had a perfect run, 25 out of 25. This deck is definitely strong. It's really strong. It's really fun. It's got a lot of great board control tools with its spells. Your Star Shard bolts, your Tracking bolts, Defend the Ramparts, your great 1-mana spells in Form of Power, as well as Ancient Text for controlling the board state. Then you have these high tempo tools like your Assistant Alchemist for the incredibly strong turn 1 Alchemist Pyramid Wardens, or Alchemist Shadow Scryers for strong turn 1s. Arcane Transcendent does a similar thing, so you can combo Arcane Transcendent with one of your bolts, so you can not only play a big 3/3, but also remove one of your opponent's cards. We've got lots of card draw in here with Palace's Wand, as well as Demetrios. Then just lots of direct damage, right? We've got 2 copies of Epiphany, got 2 copies of Worm Breath. Those combo very nicely with your Street Conjurer for some spell boost. Let's see, there's also Wall of Lightning for some spell boost power. You got your Miraculous Familiar for more value, which is, always great for these low curve decks. Valve Learning, just crazy good, great for being defensive or offensive, just incredibly versatile card. And the main card we got to talk about, though, is the Monolith of the Storm. This is definitely the deck's main win condition. This card is super powerful. The order makes it fairly hard to remove. Some gods have a really, really hard time dealing with it. And if it survives for 1 turn, you're probably going to play at least 2 spells the turn after and deal 9 damage, plus however much damage you dealt with your spells. So, in my experience, what generally happens is you chip away at your opponent with your early game creatures. Vortimir is another one I didn't mention. He's great card draw as well as damage. It's really easy to buff up his attack, hit your opponent for 3 or 4, and then draw a card. But you chip away at them with your your little mid-sized creatures, and then you deal between like 9 and 15 damage all at once with Monolith of the Storms, and then you get over the top with your Epiphanies and your Worm Breaths. This deck can sort of do it all. Like I said before, its spells are great for controlling the board if you need to be defensive. It's got lots of high tempo creatures that have like little mana cheat mechanics with your Assistant Alchemists and your Arcane Transcendence. And then like for those like end game race scenarios, you have all these really powerful spells to get over the top. This deck is really strong. It's no wonder it went 25 out of 25. Magic is definitely a contender for this weekend, and I would like to show off this list. This is a very similar deck. I personally made this one. This deck that we just went over, there's a lot of one-ofs, so consistency might be an issue, despite the fact that it did go 25 out of 25. This version that I made, there's 2 Arcane Transcendents and no Keralis Runemoth. I replaced the Defend the Ramparts for 2 Tracking Bolts. And then I removed the Wall of Lightning for 1 Frostbitten Channeler, just so the spell boost is more versatile. It's way easier to fit 2 mana into a turn than 4 mana, was my mindset with him. Both deck lists will be in the description, of course. Personally, like the deck I made fits my playstyle more. The deck that went 25 out of 25 is probably your better bet, but more choices, more better, right? But either way, Magic is super strong, super fun, definitely worth thinking about for this weekend. Alright, so now let's move on to Death. I've got a board wipe death deck as well as a zombie death deck. Let's start off with the board wipe death. This in particular list got third place over the weekend. Aldoc ran it, although I believe the Sam Bam was the original creator of this particular list. But board wipe death is really strong right now. It's been strong for the past couple of weeks. It's definitely the best control deck in the meta right now. In fact, this is the only true blue control deck that we're going to be discussing this week for the What to Play video. And board wipe death is really strong. It's been strong for the past couple of weeks. 2 weeks ago, it got two different players got 25 out of 25 with board wipe death. 3 weeks ago, somebody got 24 out of 25. The fact of the matter is, board wipe death is super strong. They have a lot of great board control tools. You got your blight bombs for the early game, sulfuric rain for card draw, as well as slow board control. Ava can just sort of single-handedly beat Zooey decks on her own, super strong. Let's see, we've got the Gist and Nibbles in here for some health total sustain. Half-Lives, which is great for the Avas, as well as V-Rocks, or even Sirens of the Graves for more sleep. Canopic Quarters for more sleep, always fun. Neferu, she's obvious. Board clear, win condition, super card. Reap for more single target removal as well as healing. Then you've got your big AoE board clears in Apocalypse Now and End Times. And for the late game, you got your demos, of course. You got Jason for a whole bunch of value, and your 2 9-drops in Polyhymnia, as well as Apacria's Monster. And you can't talk about Apacria's Monster without mentioning Neferu's Khopesh. And I've heard the past week a bunch of people saying that they're not a huge fan of the double 9-drops in board wipe death, but I disagree with that pretty wholeheartedly. I think both 9-drops are really good, mainly because Neferu's Khopesh is just such a powerful card in general. Like in the mid to mid-late game, it's really great to get lots of bonus Avas. Obviously, bonus Sirens of the Graves is broken. It's going to help you get to the late game really well. And even something like Burrowing Scarab is fine to get back over and over again. And if you're sick of drawing cards off the Burrowing Scarab, you can use Half-Life to give it Soulless and get it out of the void, and just get back everything that you want. Like those Avas, like those Sirens of the Graves. The deck doesn't have a ton of early game creatures, so you might even get a situation where you're getting a whole bunch of bonus Fanatics for more, mana ramp, which is super strong. And if you have the Neferu's Khopesh, since we established it's crazy good in this, archetype in general, you might as well run the Apacria's Monster, because if you don't know, when Apacria is in the void, it goes back to having 0 attack, and when it comes onto the board, it has the cumulative stats of all things in the void, so it's just an inevitable win condition. You spend 9 mana, you get essentially a 30-30. If your opponent deals with it, you just keep doing it again and again and again. So although, yeah, sure, you play a poly, you usually win, it's not ridiculous to destroy 1 poly. It is impossible to destroy infinite Apacria's monsters. And before you play the Apacria's monster, then you get lots of bonus Sirens of the Graves, bonus Avas, bonus Fanatics. It's just a really great combo in general. And it makes sense, right? Board wipe death is incredibly strong. It's been incredibly strong. The majority of these cards can't be nerfed, barring core cards and Ava. So if you've been thinking about picking up some cards for board wipe death, it's probably a good idea. Board wipe death is super strong, super consistent. But that's enough talk about board wipe death. Let's jump into zombie death. This is the same zombie death deck we went over last week. Pretty standard stuff. You've got your super important cards in your Cursed Obelisk as well as Necroceptor. These 2 cards are just infinite creature generators, and they work particularly well with each other. So you're generating 3 zombies a turn for a cumulative 4/4 with Leech each turn. And then you have your big win condition cards in your Nether Swarm Lord to buff up all your zombies and deal even more damage, or your Neferu's Will to get rid of all the zombies you've been generating for free all game and turning them all into one big super mega creature with overkill to either kill your opponent or clear your opponent's board and deal lots of damage. Essentially speaking, zombie death it's really strong. It's really good at maintaining a powerful board state. A lot of that goes to a Mark of Death, which gives all of your creatures afterlife summon a zombie, which makes it so you can guarantee your Nether Swarm Lord works. You can make it so you can have a super Neferu's Will turn and still maintain a huge board presence, since all the creatures that you sacrificed had afterlife. And then besides that, you can do like normal powerful zoo stuff, right? You've got your Pyramid Wardens, of course, and you have your turn 1 chicken into turn 2 demonic offerings for big tempo swings. You've also got your chickens on Tolgreeds for card draw as well as tempo. It's just it's like a fairly normal zoo deck that can also do crazy zombie stuff. It's very fun. If you want more in-depth analysis on zombie death, check out last week's What to Player of the Weekend video. We talked about this deck in great detail. But if you haven't tried out the zombies, what are you doing? Get in there. The zombies are super fun and super strong. But now that we've talked about death, let's jump into war. Alright, for this week's war deck, we've got Kargas's Aggro Frenzy Creature Buff War. This deck looks really cool. It's a fairly standard Slayer War list, but Kargas put extra emphasis on the creature buffs. Before we go over the deck in detail, let's just look at all the different creature buffs Kargas has jammed in here. We've got Out of Its Misery. Got 2 Tartessian Improvisers, 2 Another Rounds. Scythe of the Harvest technically buffs a creature +1 attack, so we're going to count that as a creature buff. And then he tops it off with 2 Soul Survivors, which has been recently buffed. You may not be aware. It used to be 7 mana, now it's 6 mana. Give a creature +5 strength, and then deal its strength as damage to all other creatures. So Soul Survivor is a creature buff as well as AoE clear for just super strong damage. And so let's jump into Kargas's list in a bit more detail. We've got the standard stuff, and Pyramid Wardens, the Blitz creatures like Vanguard Axewoman, as well as Tavern Brawlers and Archangel Bruisers, as well as Orcish Elite. Orcish Elite is super strong now. He's one of the standard Blitz creatures in all Slayer War decks. Let's see. Kargas has a bunch of direct damage in here. He's got the Vicious Wrens. He has 2 copies of 2 different relics in Blade of Styx, as well as Scythe of the Harvest for lots and lots of direct damage. Also got the Warmonger Smith for some relic buffing, as well as just skeleton heavy stats, so it's super strong. And you can tell, since Kargas has the 2 copies of Soul Survivor, he's put a lot more emphasis on going tall as opposed to wide. He's got his 3 copies of 3/2 protected creatures, which are just prime candidates for another rounding. And then he finishes it all off with clearing his opponent's whole side of the board, buffing one of his creatures to being a mega threat, and then going face until his opponent's dead. Fairly simple strategy. Build a board, play a relic, go face a bunch of times, clear their board, go face again. But so classic combo deck, damage plus damage plus damage equals lethal. Very smart move by Kargas. This deck looks super fun. Slayer is always an enjoyable archetype to play, and this one looks like it's extra fun with the extreme explosive power of Soul Survivor. If you are a die-hard war fan, I would definitely consider playing this deck. Alright, so next up we have the most popular god in nature. This list was made by Aftermath Arachnid, and first thing of note, no neutral cards, all nature cards. Who needs dumb neutral cards when nature cards are so good? At least that's what Aftermath thinks. And this is a real nice looking mid-range nature deck. You've got all your strong early game cards in your Marshwalker Chiron combos. You've got your Fey Flame Blade, as well as Finian Fruitbearer for like tons of stats and creature buffs. You've got your obvious choices with Underbrush Boar and Celestial Stag for lots of value, as well as Bless, which is super strong in the early game. But the part of the deck that I like the most is this section right here. Aftermath has 2 Rabid Bears and 2 Overgrown Rhinos, as well as Selena. Rabid Bear is super good. 3 mana 3/4 worst case scenario, which is just Hunt Warden stats. Hunt Warden is a very fair card, so worst case this card is fine. But if you can activate its Frenzy ability, it is a 3 mana 4/4, which is definitely overstated, super strong. Similar thing can be said with Overgrown Rhino. 4 mana 5/5 is very big, but it has that slight downside in being confused. but that is where Selena, Champion of Nature, comes in. Not only will Selena be warded and backlined so she's difficult to remove while she's dealing 2 damage to whatever source you want, but you'll also remove the confusion from all the creatures that you've been playing just before playing her. And having a 3 mana 4/4 that's not confused is particularly amazing. And it's not like these are the only confused creatures in the deck. Obviously, this is nature. There's underbrush boars who are confused. There's brazen mooses. There's giant pangolins. But like I was saying, the fact that Aftermath and anyone who's playing this deck will probably have dropped a rabid bear, an overgrown rhino, or both right before playing the Selena, it just makes it that much more powerful. And then moving down the curve, we've got a wildfire, quite a few wild creatures in here, so Aftermath can make great use out of this nice AoE buff card. We've got Avatar of Nature, who we talk about every single week. Avatar of Nature is just good, lots of stats, lots of board presence, lots of healing, lots of good stuff. Avatar is just great. Brazen Moose, big stats, Blessed Effect is strong. Jagstaff, high tempo, high value, lots of Jaguars is good, pairs nicely with Wildfire as well. The Giant Pangolin, that's an obvious one. Ever since this card, came into its current form, it's been seeing tons of play for good reason. The Blitz effect gives it great immediate impact. The armor makes it very hard to remove, and 6 damage is nothing to scoff at. This card will get your opponent dead very quickly. And then the last thing in the curve are 2 the Hunts, which is an interesting inclusion. I've been more used to seeing Sudden Blooms, personally, since they have similar effects. Sudden Blooms, Overkill, usually makes it so it's not only a buff card, but also a board clear. But the Hunt will definitely get the job done as well, and it's not reliant on you actually sticking a creature. So the Hunt is a better comeback mechanic in general, and the Hunt's definitely a solid card. And yeah, the deck is great. Aftermath has played 62 games with an 82.3% win rate, and the world at large has played about 450 games with a 66% win rate. So the deck can definitely hang. I know there's a ton of nature fans out there, and this is a great deck to check out. I guess like one thing that you may have noticed that's a bit weird is he's got the Compost Charm in here, which is not super common in nature, or not super common in the meta right now, but I think it has great merit. Sometimes, getting a random card is nice for those value matchups, but just like we saw in the beginning of the video, War is very popular, Slayer War in particular, and healing your god for 10 might be the difference between winning and losing when your opponents just sort of swing with their relic and hitting their Slayer God power button. So I do think the Compost Charm is a good tech inclusion for this current meta. And yeah, all in all, I think this is a great mid-range nature deck. But if you were thinking this deck seems a little too slow, you were hoping for fast, aggressive nature, then don't you worry, because we've got that prepared as well. This is an aggressive nature deck that I've been playing for the past couple of days. I've been calling it token nature, because the mindset behind this deck is you play multiple waves of creatures, and then you have so many AoE buff cards that eventually one of your waves will stick, and then you capitalize on those creatures with either one of your 2 Gloam Druids, one of your 2 Wildfires, or one of your 2 Falling Stars. So the way this deck works is it builds a strong board, but like I said, it doesn't build it in a normal sense, it builds waves. Your first wave being reliant on Crescent Werewolf, which has some super high roll potential. I've actually managed to pull off this combo a handful of times, where on turn 2 you play your entire hand and you play 6 creatures on the board, and it's super strong. That usually involves you playing Crescent Werewolf on 2, and then pipping into either Marshwalker or Wild Hog, and then you generate 1 extra mana. You play your Best Friends, which generates you 2 mana. Then you can play either a Black Jaguar or an Underbrush Boar, or a Gloam Druid, followed by 1 last Wild Hog or Marshwalker. So you play your entire hand and fill up your board from 0 creatures to 6 creatures as early as turn 2, and if that board sticks, you buff everything up with Gloam Druid and kill them. If they manage to clear that board, who cares? You play the Bladefly, you refill your board. If that sticks, same thing. You buff it all with Gloam Druid or with Wildfire. If they manage to get rid of your Bladefly, you have the second Bladefly, or you have the Falling Star to refill your board, and then you capitalize off of the aforementioned Wildfires or Gloam Druids. The idea is that you're capable of making so many wide boards so easily that eventually your opponent won't be able to remove one of them, and since you have 6 different AoE buff cards, you're bound to have one in your hand, and then you capitalize and you hit him in the face very, very hard. Super fun deck. If you are a Hearthstone fan and you enjoyed playing like Token Druid, this will be right up your alley. Slightly different taste of nature than we're used to. Not mid-rangey at all. Very aggressive, very board spammy. Definitely a good time. And yeah, so that is nature. And let's move on to our last domain of the night, and that will be deception. All right, now we are on to our last god in deception. The reason deception is the last god we're talking about is because deception is kind of like the ugly duckling of gods right now in Gods Unchained. It doesn't really do anything well. Sleep Deception is just a weaker version of Board Wipe Death. Hidden Rush Deception is incredibly feast or famine at the moment. It does fairly well against War and Light, but it gets completely destroyed by nature and magic, so you can't really play that. But we do have Guild Deception, which in my opinion is Deception's best / most fun archetype. We talked about this deck in great length last week, and if you haven't played this deck, if you haven't seen Guild Deception, definitely check out last week's video, because this might be the most fun deck to play like right now in all of Gods Unchained, although it's not the greatest deck. And it's definitely not the easiest to play. You generate a lot of random cards, so it's very skill testing. You have a lot of like big, huge, high tempo, high value plays, which makes the deck super fun. Like I said before, if you want like a big in-depth analysis, watch last week's video, because we're going to glance over this one a bit faster now since I spoke about it a ton last week, and since Deception's not the greatest god around at the moment. But one of the main points of this deck is the Desert Mercenary, which is arguably the strongest card in your entire deck. It is a 3-mana 3/3. Its roar effect makes all of your guild creatures that cost 2 or 3 cost 1 mana. And as you can see from the curve, there are a ton of 3-mana creatures in here, because those are the best ones to cheapen. Let's see, we've got the Jinxblade Duelist. This is our heaviest hitter 3-mana guild creature. The rest of them are primarily value generators, right? We also have the Prison Escapee, who's a high tempo card. This is sort of like Deception's version of Cursed Obelisk, in the sense that this is a single card that can just sort of be your board state for the entire game, as long as your opponent can't deal with the order effect. Let's see, you've got the Hollow, who's crazy. This card generates you so many resources, and the resources he generates you are all guild-themed, which works in your deck since you have the guild payoff cards and Desert Mercenary, as well as Fermentari Instigator to draw cards. Diligent Architect is definitely a card to talk about. Diligent Architect used to be a meme card. Delving Structures used to be very weak, but with the introduction of Divine Order, there are a handful of really, really powerful relics. Pretty much every god except Deception has a great legendary relic. Like if you get a Grand Hall, if you get a Monolith of the Storms, if you get an Arch of Amemnos, if you get that 5-mana light structure, those are all just game-winning delves right off the bat. And then just, even if you low roll and you don't get one of those amazing structures, any structure with frontline that has the increased 2 health is definitely good. Let's see, the Prison Escapee plus Prisoner Exchange combo is, definitely worth mentioning. So like I said before, Prison Escapee can sort of just be your board state, seeing as that he generates a new Prison Escapee after he loses order. Prisoner Exchange just makes it so you can play your Prison Escapee and then immediately get its effect, so you can sort of set yourself up to have 4 Prison Escapees relatively quickly. Let's see, we've got the Surprise Delivery for some extra face damage, as well as filling up your opponent's side of the board so they can't, overwhelm you with creatures. And then the last card to talk about is a Lanternbound Fae, which is a Divine Order legendary. It's super good. It itself has Order 3. It deals 3 damage to whatever source you want with its roar effect, and then whenever one of your creatures loses order, it bounces back to your hand and its mana cost is reduced by 1. It's very easy to manufacture situations where you play Lanternbound Fae and then end your turn and have it bounce right back to your hand. It's particularly easy to facilitate with the Hollow. Oh, also, real quick, I just realized that I said Deception didn't have an amazing legendary structure, and I'm super wrong. They have the Hollow, which you run in your deck naturally. It's one of your best cards. It generates you a ton of resources, and it really helps your Lanternbound Fae pop off. And yeah, this deck is super fun, lots of cool combos, generating cards makes every game feel fresh. Like I said a bunch of times already, if you haven't played this deck and you're interested, check out last week's video. This deck is super fun, and I talk about it a ton. But like I said, despite this deck being fun, Deception is not the greatest god right now. If you really want to play it, this is, in my opinion, is the best Deception archetype. But you'd be better off going with Light or Magic. And yeah, so now that we have talked about all of the potential archetypes you might want to play, it is time for the conclusion. Alright, so now that we've talked about the meta, we've gone over an archetype for each god, what is the conclusion, what deck should we play, what is the best route for a good performance this weekend in the weekend ranked tournament? Well, that is easy. Definitely either Light or Magic. I am a big fan of Clutch's new and improved Light deck with the Odysseus and Astrea's Envoy. Like I've been saying for the past couple of weeks, Light is super strong. The playstyle is very, straightforward. Light is really good. This deck looks spicy. This is probably the best deck to go with. That being said, this sort of hodgepodge other Magic deck also got 25 out of 25. It's super strong. Magic is really fun. I personally prefer the list that I made, obviously. I agree with my own opinions. But of course, the tried and true 25 out of 25 deck is definitely a good choice. But yeah, Light and Magic, in my opinion, are the two best gods to go with. Me personally, I'll probably be going with Magic, since I think the playstyle is a bit more fun. But Light or Magic, definitely two super heavy hitters, but whatever deck you go with, tell us how you did in the TST Discord, and make sure you have fun, and good luck this weekend. Hey, you! Did you know that subscribing to the TST YouTube channel will increase your win rate by 6.9%? So what are you waiting for? Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell for notifications. And while you're at it, equip Scythe of the Harvest and attack the like button directly in the face. Bye-bye!